What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and today we're going to be talking about illustration rares, because why the heck would we not be? It has been an incredible start to the Scarlet and Violet era. I think that, I'll first by saying this. The four most expensive words in the world of investing are "this time it's different." And that's because there are many times in our investing lives where things feel different, or things might be performing slightly different. But at the end of the day, almost always, I never speak in definitives, but almost always things end up reverting to the mean, and they end up going back to performing the way similar items or products or cards, for example, have performed in the past. And I'm going to tell you right now, Scarlet and Violet is performing differently out of the gate. I think that part of that might be because the artwork is awesome, right? I mean, we are blessed with some really, really cool cards and some really cool artwork. I think part of that is because the market is a little bit in a frenzy because, Sword and Shield is ending with such a bang. Those alt arts are absolutely on fire. Booster boxes are going for crazy prices. Like, there's just a lot of excitement in the market right now, and I do think a lot of people are trying to identify those next cards. As we watch all of these alt arts spike in price, I think a lot of us are thinking, hey, which cards are going to be next 2, 3, 4 years down the road when Scarlet and Violet is sunsetting? Where are we going to find some of these big gains like we're already seeing in Sword and Shield? And I think that's why a lot of these cards are popping off in price. But there's a lot of Scarlet and Violet left to be opened. We haven't even gone through our first wave of reprints or restocks or whatever that might end up looking like. So I don't think there's any shortage of time frame to grab a lot of these awesome cards or a lot of these awesome products. However, I do think it's time for us to start looking at some of these, because some of them are over a year old at this point, right? And we know when we watched how some of the Sword and Shield products performed in the past, really at that 12, 18 month is when they started to actually gain and hold on to those gains and kind of get off the roller coaster a little bit and see some more of just like steady gains upwards and to the right. So we're going to look at illustration rares today, and we're going to be talking about 10 of my favorite ones that are out there. And then some of them I think are already investable, believe it or not. I think some of these have the opportunity for good long-term price appreciation, and some of them it's a little too early to tell. So not only are we going to look at the cards, we're going to look at their PSA gem rates, we're going to look at the number of PSA 10s that are in the market right now, and we're going to have a ton of fun as we go through this list. So I will say this, if you love this kind of approach, we have a ton of fun. Hit that subscribe button. If you find value in this content, give it a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. So without further ado, let's get into some of these awesome cards. Now, I'm starting off with the oldest to the newest, and spoiler alert, I don't have any from Scarlet and Violet base set on here. It's not because I don't think Scarlet and Violet base set is good, but when I'm thinking about my top 10 cards that I'm kind of targeting right now, none of them were on the list. But Paldea Evolved, however, has these two cards because I think they are stunners. And I have been talking about these on this channel ad nauseum for at least, I don't know, the last 6 months now. And there's a lot of reason to love these cards. First off, the artwork is absolutely awesome. Second off, Paldea Evolved is performing really well. I mean, the booster boxes for Paldea Evolved are already at almost $130, which gets my spidey senses tingling a little bit, makes me think that there's going to be a reprint or a restock here at some point. But the other reason that I've talked about at nauseum, and one of the reasons I love the investability of these cards in the long run, is because their gem rate is so incredibly low. The print quality in Paldea Evolved was absolutely abysmal, which means having these in high grade, in mint copies, or even really, really high-end raw copies is going to give them the opportunity to appreciate over time. And you can see that both of these have already seen a big spike in price. As soon as people started to realize, hey, listen, this artwork's pretty cool. Paldea Evolved, the gem rates are really low. I think that's why we saw these spike up so much. Now, the Tyranitar is starting to come back down a little bit, but that Raichu is holding on. Now, when I said a low gem rate, look at these two cards. It is a 16% gem rate for that Tyranitar. So that means out of all of the cards that have been sent to PSA for grading, only 16% of them have come back with a gem mint 10. If you compare that to the chase cards from Sword and Shield, those chase cards have a 60 or 70% gem rate, just an absolute crazy difference. And then that Raichu right there sitting at 19%. And the total PSA 10 population for that Tyranitar card, there's only 193 of these in PSA 10 holders. And this set has been out for over a year now, right? And there's only 193 of them. Same thing with that Raichu card right there. There's only 182 of those in PSA 10 holders. So do I think these cards have a bright future? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to take a lot of time for that future to be realized? Absolutely. And as with all of these cards that we're going to talk about, I'm going to say it once in the beginning, but know that it applies to all of them. There's a lot more of these packs and these boxes to be opened into the future, so the populations will go up. I think there's plenty of time to pick these up, but I do think that these two cards, pending a reprint, I don't know if there's going to be restocks or reprints, but if there is a reprint and the gem rate is substantially higher, right? We're starting to see higher quality reprints now, or at least, I mean, higher quality sets now. If we see a reprint and the gem quality is much, much higher, then we might see these prices fluctuate a little bit, and it might affect the investability a little bit, but we shall see. You always have to make decisions with the information you have at hand, and these two cards certainly are absolute fire from a whole bunch of different perspectives. So the next ones we're going to look at right here are the ones from Obsidian Flames. Now, Obsidian Flames is a set that I'm really on the fence about. It has Darkness Ablaze feeling to me. Like, it just feels like a set that isn't going to get a whole lot of love in the long run, right? Darkness Ablaze, you got the Charizard at the very top, which is at like $25 right now. The whole set, just from top to bottom, is not worth a whole lot of money. But in Obsidian Flames, you have this Ninetales card, and I really like this Ninetales card. I think the artwork is absolute fire. I think that the Charizards that are in this set are going to have a little bit more oomph again, because guess what? That Charizard, the Chase Charizard in Obsidian Flames, has a really low gem rate as well. We've seen Charizards with really low gem rates have the ability in time to kind of drive the overall value of the set up. So I know that, hey, listen, I know it's not the best Charizard. I know it's not worth the most money out there, but again, in the long run, if those gem mint 10s are really hard to get by, it can just organically lift the whole setup. So this Ninetales, again, a gem rate of 31%, and again, a set that has been out for a hot minute, right? Just coming up on that 1 year mark. There's only 601 of those in PSA 10s right now. And then my flyer pick was that Cleffa card. I just love the artwork. There are some cards on this list where, hey, listen, they might not be the best investments in the long run, right? Like this Cleffa card probably isn't going to make you rich if you have a whole bunch of them, but I love the art on this one. I think it's absolutely adorable. I love the shooting star in the background, and again, really low gem rate at 34% and a really low PSA 10 population at 324. Now, I will say this, some of these cards that maybe don't have that big investability or the big dollar of value tied to them right now, you're going to see a lower PSA 10 population, right? It's not because of anything other than people aren't going to spend the money to get a card like this graded right now until that raw card value starts to go up and until the PSA 10 price starts to go up a little bit. So you kind of got to weigh all the factors when you're looking at things such as gem rates and such as overall PSA 10 popularity. But guess what? It's my list. I like the Cleffa card. I think it's beautiful. So here it is, being a representation of Obsidian Flames. Now, the next cards right here that we're looking at are from Scarlet and Violet 151. And these two cards are hands down probably my favorite on the entire list, okay? They might not be the biggest and the baddest. They might not give you the best lift in the long run, but I 100% think that they're investable. I 100% that think 5, 10, 15 years from now, these cards are going to have a solid value attached to them. And I just think the artwork is absolute fire. You look at that Squirtle card right there, you don't see awesome artwork like that for my man Squirtle very often. So I think that card is absolutely fire. Again, Scarlet and Violet 151 had a relatively low print quality compared to some other sets we have seen in the past. So that Squirtle card right there has a 38% gem rate. And again, 151 is so incredibly popular that the overall populations for these PSA 10s is much higher than what we've seen in some of these other sets, right? So that Squirtle card has a population of 1,431 in PSA 10s. And think about it, with a low gem rate like 38%, think about how many of these have been sent to PSA for grading. That's probably about 5,000 cards that have been sent to PSA grading. We haven't even seen a restock of 151 yet. Now, we've seen it on the Japanese side. My spidey senses are kind of tingling. I think that we might see one later on in the year here on the English side. We shall see. I feel like it's got to happen. I feel like Pokemon would be missing an opportunity if they didn't. But again, even if there is a massive restock, again, the fact that the gem rate is relatively low is going to keep the population of this card relatively low, and I think that gives us some protection in the long run. That Pikachu card is just straight fire. I love everything about it. You have a hodgepodge of different Pokemon on there. Obviously, you got Gengar there in the foreground. You got Growlithe on there. I mean, the list goes on and on of all the cool Pokemon that you have on that Pikachu card right there. Again, another one with a really low gem rate. I know 40% is high compared to all the cards that we've looked at so far, but when you compare it to other eras, 40% is still super, super low. Again, you'll see some higher gem rates later on in this video. And again, only 1,522 of these in a PSA 10 holder right now. When we're thinking about strictly illustration rares, I love these two cards from 151. I think they have an extremely bright future, and I think we will see 3, 5, 10 years from now that 151 is going to be an overall set for the ages. The only thing that could possibly go wrong is if for whatever reason Pokemon decides to absolutely print it into the ground. While I do think there's going to be a reprint or a restock, I don't think that they're going to reprint it into oblivion, but who knows, I could be wrong. Next cards we're going to look at right here are two from individual sets. So we got Temporal Forces and we got Paradox Rift right here. And we got the Yveltal right there, which I am a big believer, I say this all the time, buy what will go up, not what has gone up. And I have absolutely missed the boat on that card right there. I mean, thinking of the fact that maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago, this card was sitting at a $5 card and the artwork is absolutely stunning. This is one of the ones where it might not be a household name in terms of Pokemon space, right? Like if you ask my kids who watch the genre, you know, who are a part of the Pokemon sphere, if you ask them, they won't be able to pronounce that card, right? But that's okay because the artwork is so fire and a whole lot of us out there are big fans. So I think that this card does have the opportunity. Now, the gem rate's starting to get higher, right? We talked about that, how the earlier stages of Scarlet and Violet had a much lower gem rate. And as we get deeper and deeper into the Scarlet and Violet era, we're starting to see that gem rate come up a little bit. So now we have our first card with a gem rate over 50%, right? This one is at a 53%. And again, the overall population is relatively low. The set is still super new. There's only 164 of them. Like, take all of that with a grain of salt. We will have to give this a little more time to flush out. Then you have the Ghastly card over there. Again, I love this artwork. I think this card has the opportunity to be something really special in the long run. Of course, I'm a little bit biased because you know that Gengar is my dog, huge Gengar fan. So I've got a little bit of special love for this card right here. But again, a sub 50% gem rate right now, sitting at 484 in PSA 10 holders. Again, none of that means anything. We'll have to wait another 3 or 4 months until they get more submissions into PSA to see what the actual gem rate's going to be, to get some finger on the pulse of what might happen from a population standpoint. But overall, I still think both of these cards have a really bright future just from a character and from an artwork perspective. Like, they are both stunning cards. Huge fan of that Ghastly card, and I think that one has the opportunity to be a sleeper. And both of these, I mean, the Ghastly card's sitting at like $24. You can pick that up on eBay right now. My gosh, you can do far worse than $24 than picking up that card. The next one's right here, and what we're finishing off this video with are 2 cards from Twilight Masquerade. And again, way too early to talk about gem rates. There have only been 1,400 and total cards from Twilight Masquerade that have been graded at PSA. Odds are these are people who ripped cards super early. They sent them through to PSA with some kind of expedited processing because they wanted to be first to market with PSA 10s, because first to market at PSA 10s, they go for a ton of money. Like that Greninja Guaranteed is selling for a ton of money. That Eevee in a PSA 10 holder is going for a ton of money. But even though it's too early to start looking at this, out of 1,400 that have been sent through, 61% have come back in a PSA 10 holder. And we saw those last 2 cards that we looked at, the gem rates are starting to creep up. So it is within the realm of possibility that we could sit here and say it is a pretty good feeling that Twilight Masquerade is going to be a higher gem rate than the earlier sets that we've seen in the Scarlet and Violet era. And I will say this, I think that Eevee card, and I even think this Chansey card, have the opportunity long term. I mean, I'm talking way down the road. The Eevee much sooner, but that Chansey card further down the road have the opportunity to give us some really solid gains. When you think about these alt arts that we have seen pop up, right? We've done a ton of data dives here on the PikaPikaPaPa channel into artworks and into the alt art space. And what we did was we went back and looked at where they were priced a year ago. We just did this video. We said, okay, here are the top 20 alt arts. 1 year ago, here's where their price was. Today is here's where their price is. And we looked at the cards that had the biggest percentage jump over that 1 year. And yes, the biggest and the baddest performed really well. The Giratinas, right? The Umbreons, right? The Gengars, right? Like, they performed really well. But where we saw the biggest gains were not from those big 3, right? It was from some of the cards that were not the biggest and the baddest at that point 1 year ago. So it's really interesting to look at cards like this, especially, you know, the Chansey card right there. You could take a flyer, you could probably buy 3 of them and get them for, I don't know, 45, 50 bucks right there. And then if they end up popping off in the future, you got a really great buy and hold for the long term. That Eevee card right there sitting at $46, it's brand new. It's going to go through a little bit of a Pokemon pop and flop, but I will say this, Scarlet and Violet, we haven't seen a lot of the flop. We've seen a whole lot of pop, but not as much flop as we have in the past. So it's too early to make a call on these, but I think from an artwork perspective, I think these cards are going to have the opportunity to perform really well in the long run. Listen, I am as excited as I can be about the cards that we currently have, but I am even more excited about what's going to come in the future in Scarlet and Violet. These are the best that I think that we have so far, but I do think that as I start to see Stellar Crown, as I start to think about Glory of Team Rocket, as I start to think about my Thunderclap and Pikachu that's going to be coming out here in a little bit, right? Like, we've got some really exciting cards. So just because these cards are the biggest and the baddest of Scarlet and Violet right now, I think we have plenty to be excited about, and I think that these cards will end up settling somewhere in the middle to the bottom of the list in the future, although some of these might have the wherewithal to stay at the very top. I'm just super excited about what lies ahead. So as I say at the end of every single video, video. I hope you enjoyed this. I appreciate you watching more than I can possibly say. If you got value from this content, hit a thumbs up. If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, why don't you go ahead and do that? And if you have questions or comments, drop them down below. I appreciate you more than I can say. I hope you have an epic one, and I'll talk to you soon. See you later, everybody. Bye.